There we go. Good evening and welcome to Grandma's Attic Music Review. Every once in a while, it just happens. You find out what live TV is all about. So, yes, here we are tonight. I'm excited about this show. You should be excited about this show. We have a return guest. Because we're going to talk about what he does best, which is gets on stage and tells us about things of the past. That's what he tells us about. And things of the sea and things of wonderful things. Anyway, we're going to talk about some of the shows he has coming up. And I'm always thrilled to have him in the studio with me. I hope that you will absolutely welcome into your living room tonight, Mr. Geoff Kaufman.
Where the stone walls run to the face of the cliff, so many times my love and I have wandered here like this, where the waters that flow past the mouth of the bay have brushed the shores of distant lands half a world away. Now just last week we waded in the waters of the Nile, dropped our line into the brine of a South Pacific isle, and the waters underneath our bow knew Jonah and the whale as a right-hand side of Moses' seed left here in this pail. And the waters here within my hand once washed a mermaid's hair. Sir Francis Drake's Armada sank on that ripple over there. And these three small drops upon the oar did float Ulysses home. As round and round and round the world the restless waters roll, where the stone walls run to the face of the cliff. So many times my love and I have wandered here like this, where the waters that flow past the mouth of the bay have brushed the shores of distant lands half a world away. Now this small drop of water turned the first rock into sand. This one here ran off the back of the first fish upon land. And this one graced Atlantis as it sank beneath the wave. And this one kept a vigil at 1,000 sailors' graves. So sometimes we may be rowing out upon the China Sea, or dropping pebbles in the blue at a breach at Normandy, or be wet down by a breaking wave that came from Botany Bay, as around and round and round the world the waters roam each day, where the stone walls run to the face of the cliff. So many times my love and I have wandered here like this, where the waters that flow past the mouth of the bay have brushed the shores of distant lands half a world away. And it's many's the one has left their home to sail upon the sea, seek their fortune on the waters so many miles from these. But the further that you sail away, the sooner you float home, as around and round and round the world the restless waters roll.
Wonderful. No, you're going to play and play
Oh.
and play and play.
All right.
You can come over and talk to me after you've earned your keep.
All right. Well, that song is called Restless Waters, written by John Campbell from South County, Rhode Island. And he's a guy better known for his comedic stuff, but that song, he just said it came to him, it kind of came through him. And I love it as a kind of a metaphoric reference to all of us. I mean, we got a lot of water in us, and that water's been all over the world a lot of times. So that's also the title of my latest album, as a matter of fact. When I learned that song years ago, I said, that's going to be the title cut of an album, and it is my latest. And I've got a bunch of stuff that people have been asking me to sing and record for a long time. So this is one of those. This one comes from Dean Stevens from up Boston way. He lives outside of Boston, but he's an amazing guy. He's right now in Central America. He works with El Salvadorians. He brings coffee back from them to sell to help support one particular village. And he's written some wonderful stuff. Years ago, he went out to the West Coast, and he was touring out in Washington and Oregon. And he was thinking about the salmon that used to run up those rivers. And because of dams that it built, couldn't get to their home waters anymore, particularly the salmon on the Salmon River in Idaho. Cry a song, shed a tear for a northwest salmon, sockeye streak of muscle brawn, steel-headed will, swimming saltwater, freshwater, feast or famine, their battle is uphill. Cast an eye of wonder on a river fast and long, it is a highway, a maiden voyage, a swan song. Feel the force that against the rippling waters flow as the fish on a survival death journey go. Salmon River winds its way through Idaho, sparkles as it runs and it glistens as it flows. Many rapids bubbling down cry a last farewell. Where the sockeye will go now, no tongue can tell. It is a sad song in the crystal waters flow. Where have my salmon gone? The river wants to know. When the spring came, salmon gave the river its name, shimmering salmon. One day, no more came. Say your prayer with the Indian who came here to give thanks for this bounty, this feast. Fill the river bank to bank for this life-giving dance of 10,000 years cut short by the plans of a corps of engineers. Say your many angry words at an arrogant race. Gotta grab all the land, all the water, all the space. Got to take, got to make, got to get, got to plunder. Gotta chop it up, gotta dam it up, got to plow it all under. Swim upstream 1,000 miles just to spawn helpless line. Young ones being born around the old ones spent will die. In this never-ending circle of a life-giving dance, stand with me before this miracle. To the sockeye stand a chance for the salmon's journey. Is it a first or a last journey from the Salmon River to the Snake, to the Columbia River, to the cold, dark Pacific. This teeming life delivers, if not swallowed in the nets of the toxic grip. They'll be following that scent on a never-ending trip, if not taken in the drift nets. The factory ships through the krill-laden Arctic waters they'll slip, if not slaughtered for the worth of their bright orange roe. Back to the waters of their birth, salmon doggedly go. Back to the dams the electric ratepayers built, back to the Cascade clear cut, the river turned to silt, against a current of water, against a current of time, against the got to get yours, got to go get mine, against the plenty of gloom blame to go around, against the river so tamed that you cannot hear the sound of the salmon's journey. Is it a last journey? Salmon River winds its way through Idaho, sparkles as it runs and it glistens as it flows. Many rapids bubbling down cry a last farewell. Where the cyclone will go now, no tongue can tell. It is a sad song in the crystal waters flow. Where have my salmon gone? The river wants to know. When the spring came, salmon gave the river its name. Shimmering salmon, one day no more
So, and I was just out in Colorado last summer and actually got to spend a little time on the Salmon River, and I was thinking about that. But the fact is that changes are being made to some of the big dams to make it easier for salmon to get upriver, and some of the dams are being taken out further upriver. So there's some progress being made on that. But when you think about the environmental effect of those salmon getting up the rivers and being eaten by bears, for instance, and then fertilizing the forest, and the impact of what they do, their part in the ecology of a region is pretty amazing. So, a couple of my favorite singers we'll talk about a little later, Cindy Manxon and Steve Gillette, are people that I've followed musically for a long time, and this is one of my favorite songs. That they didn't write this song. This comes from Mark Graham from out in Seattle way, but kind of reflects a little bit of my opinion of maybe where we're at as humanity these days.
When I sit in contemplation of the human situation, I often feel a certain sense of pride. Our achievements are many and mighty. The evidence cannot be denied. But my reverie is shaken, for my thoughts are often taken to a tragedy that happened long ago, when there roamed through this land a beings awesome and grand, the fabulous dinosaurs. They were creatures of a manner quite reptilian in their unique and stylish way, and their numbers could be counted in the millions, though there's zero of these heroes in the world today. They had music, art, and fashion. They had dinosauric passion, and I think they'd be enraged and mortified that when they're mentioned today, it's only to say their brains were small and they died. Wah 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 wah. Their brains were small and they died. Now perhaps some asteroid that Mother Earth could not avoid became the agent of their premature demise. Well, I know that these things can happen, but who are we to criticize? One will pay most any price to have the ultimate device that ensures the perfect global suicide. I would venture instead that the humanoid head is where the tinier brain resides. And when we're gone, our works begin to crumble till nothing can be found. In 10 million years, some other guys will stumble on our fossils, and some fellow will begin to explode. In a scientific study to his cockroach science buddies, the evidence cannot be denied. They were big, dumb, and slow. They couldn't go with the flow. Their brains were small and they died. Everybody, wah 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 wah. Their brains were small and they died.
Rather insightful piece, I think. I often do that as a medley with a Mark Twain recitation, and the two just marry up very nicely about where we're at, perhaps. Let me do another song from that actually was written by Steve Gillette. One of my favorites. It's as a guy who likes to get outside and hike on occasion and such. So this is about getting out there.
There's a new ridge road, cuts the mountain through the bowl, slices through the trees like there ain't nobody home. Can drive on up to Valley View and you wouldn't feel the climb. I take the old trail every time. The old trail moseys right along, moves with the speed of a sweet love song. Wind in the trees carries her own wind to chime. I'll take the old trail every time. Lately it seems we lose things by degrees. How soon we forget our tree houses are made out of trees. When we gonna realize some reasons just don't rhyme. I'll take the old trail every time. The old trail, may she never fade. One where the deer always have the right of way. How I love to watch the winter eve along the timber line. I'll take the old trail every time. People in cars let the radio do the talking, but it always seems I'm singing when I'm walking. The old trail moseys right along, moves with the speed of a sweet love song. Wind in the trees carries her own wind to chime. I'll take the old trail every time. I'll take the old trail every time.
The Old Trail by Steve Gillette. Well, let's see. Let me do something else off that new album of mine. A lot of talk about immigrants and immigration and refugees and such these days. And so I'd like to go back to this song that was written by a good friend of mine, Jan Christensen in New York City for the 1986 centennial celebration of Ellis Island and Statue of Liberty. And so in this song, he just brings a bunch of people to America one way or the other, and worth thinking about.
Oh, my name is Juan, and I come to this country, the boat lift from Mariel Bay. As I walk the streets of your city, I heard some people say they all look funny and they don't speak English, taking our jobs away. But from out of the past I heard people who said, from an island in New York Bay, Ellis Island, come down the gangplank, go through the door, stand on the long, long line. Do you have TB or a social disease? Your hands and your legs work fine. Do you have some relatives there on the shore who can vouch for your sanity? And if you make it through the day, they will stamp your card and say, hey, hey, welcome to the land of the free. Oh, my name is Pat. I come from Killarney, where I worked with both my hands. But the crops, they failed, and the agent came, threw me off of my lands. So across the ocean with a pack on my back, and I hope they'll let me stay. The old world is gone, but I see a new home from this island in New York Bay. Ellis Island, come down the gangplank, go through the door, stand on the long, long line. Do you have TB or a social disease? Your hands and your legs work fine. Do you have some relatives there on the shore who can vouch for your sanity? If you make it to the day, they will stamp your card and say, hey, hey, welcome to the land of the free. Oh, my name is Rivka. I come from Russia, where I never knew luxury. The Cossacks came with their swords and their guns, and they killed all my family. So I came here where people don't live in fear, and I'll sweat in your dress shops all day. Though I'm tattered and worn, I see dreams being born from this island in New York Bay. Ellis Island, come down the gangplank, go through the door, stand on the long, long line. Do you have TB or a social disease? Your hands and your legs work fine. Do you have some relatives there on the shore who can vouch for your sanity? And if you make it through the day, they will stamp your card and say, hey, hey, welcome to the land of the free. Oh, my name is Guido. I come from Palermo, where I laid the bricks all day. But I had a dream that was bigger than Palermo. That's why I sailed away. So I'll climb your buildings, and I'll build your subways, and I'll save up all of my pay. So next year my wife and my family can come to this island in New York Bay. Ellis Island, come down the gangplank, go through the door, stand on the long, long line. Do you have TB or a social disease? Hands and your legs work fine. Do you have some relatives there on the shore who can vouch for your sanity? And if you make it through the day, they will stamp your card and say, hey, hey, welcome to the land of the free. So we are the ghosts of old Ellis Island. We have our tales to tell. Some of us left a good life to come here. Some left a living hell. But we'll cross the ocean, we'll make this land, and we make it in our very own way. So to those who have come, we all say welcome home to this island in New York Bay. Ellis Island, come down the gangplank, go through the door, stand on the long, long line. Do you have TB or a social disease? Your hands and your legs work fine. Do you have some relatives there on the shore who can vouch for your sanity. And if you make it through the day, they will stamp your card and say, hey, hey, welcome to the land of the free. And if you make it through the day, they will stamp your card and say, hey, hey, welcome to the land of the free.
Keep going.
Keep going. How long do you want me to go?
You can do a couple more. If you have them.
Oh, I know a couple more songs.
I thought you might know a few.
Well, one of the other songs I put on this album to get us into that sea realm is the second of a pair of songs written about a wonderful character, Zebulon Tilton from Martha's Vineyard. And he was a sailor on schooners, and one particular schooner for 20 or more years, out of Martha's Vineyard, the Alice Wentworth. And he was just a wonderful character, and such a character that a lot was written about him. And so Larry Kaplan, out of Essex, Connecticut, has written a couple of good songs about him. This one, late in his career, his eyes were giving out. He used to get young deckhands on board to help him out to see what was coming. And so that's how he built this particular song. And I think it was built on a real story of some kind. Lots of stories about Zeb Tilton out there. So this is called Drivin' Home.
A schooner's home is Portland, boys, Cape Rozier, now she's bound. Hauling coal and lumber up the coast and then back down. Come all of you who choose the sea, come listen to my tale of the captain and the cabin boy and how they made her sail. Driving home, fair weather, winds a nor'west, for better fogs away, we'll soon be home again. It was on the 21st of March, the Alice S did sail, loaded down with cordwood stacked clear up to the rail. Well, the sheets did strain, the sails did fill to the damned old northeast wind. Captain had his lad beside as he watched the fog roll in. Driving home, fair weather, winds a nor'west, for better fogs away, we'll soon be home again. And I heard the mast creaking, oh, I feared we'd soon be leaking, and the pine tree shores nowhere to be seen. Well, the cabin tops was clicking to that rigging, wet and dripping, and the wind so loud I swear you couldn't hear. Driving home, fair weather, winds a nor'west, or better fogs away, we'll soon be home again. Fog be damned, I had to holler, but the old man drove her on, sent the boy to the bow, made him fast to a belaying pin. Well, now tell me what you see, be a fish or tree, keep your sharp eyes far ahead. It's a nasty sound when you run aground, the old schooner captain said. Driving home, fair weather, winds a nor'west, for better fogs away, we'll soon be home again. 10 minutes past, the fog so thick the boy could not be seen. Captain kept her on her course, then we heard the young lad scream. I see ducks, he said, there's ducks ahead. Sure as I'm alive, 20 ducks or so crossed our route to go on a hard driving tide. Well, the captain watched the mainsail, and I thought I saw him grinning. He cocked his head and why they said, well, be they walking or be they swimming? They be walking, came the lad's reply as loud as it could be. In a voice so grand came the next command, well, ready about and hard alee. Driving home, fair weather, winds a nor'west, or better fogs away, we'll soon be home again. So you who choose this sailing, take care of fears you're failing, and if strong you be, don't think you've got it made. For there's more you need be learning, for the pittance you'll be earning in this wet and windy life of the schooner trade. Driving home, fair weather, winds a nor'west, for better fogs away, we'll soon be home again. Driving home, fair weather, winds a nor'west, for better fogs away, we'll soon be home again.
Well, let me do one called Seven Wishes. Got this from a trio of women who called themselves Mad Woman in the Attic. And
My kind of women.
you bet. And they were three incredible musicians. And I met them when I was singing with the Sloop Singers and Pete Seeger some years ago. And we did a concert in Peekskill, New York. And we were all there with Pete to sing. And this trio and a couple of other folks were there. And they had a 4-song cassette sampler there that I grabbed. And by the time I was back home in this part of Connecticut, this song was in my head. So I often sing this as the last song of the night, just to give people 7 wishes.
I dream of 7 days, clockless host of hours, with their resilient ways of juvenescent hours. I dream of 7 seas, countless host of fishes, and on the fins of these I dream of 7 wishes. One is for a piece of the sky, one is for peace on earth. 2 are the twin drums of your heartbeat, 2 are forever and ever, and 1 is for what it's worth. I dream of 7 stars, bright enough to guide some bold and brigand ship to harbors far and wide. I dream of 7 birds that dive and swim for fishes, and on the wings of these I offer 7 wishes. 1 is for a piece of the sky, 1 is for peace on earth. 2 are the twin drums of your heartbeat, 2 are forever and ever, and 1 is for what it's worth. I dream of 7 looms and robes of golden stitches, and on the weave of these I cast my 7 wishes. I cast my 7 wishes. 1 is for a piece of the sky, 1 is for peace on earth. 2 are the twin drums of your heartbeat, 2 are forever and ever. 1 is for what it's, 1 is for a piece of the sky, 1 is for peace on earth. 2 are the twin drums of your heartbeat, 2 are forever and ever, and 1 is for what it's worth, and 1 is for what it's worth.
You can come over if you want now.
Okay.
I'd like that. So while Geoff is coming over, let me just remind you that there are some wonderful things going on in the neighborhood. If you're watching this on Atlantic Broadband, this coming up Friday night at the Guard Arts is a band called Girls, Guns, and Glory. They'll be playing up in the Oasis Room. Really great show if you get a chance to see it. You'll be happy to see it. It's a great show. And we're going to talk about another gem of ours, Friday Night Folk. Go to FridayNightFolk.org and you'll be able to see all that's going on with us. But that's what we're going to talk about, etc. Hi, Geoff.
Hi.
Welcome. Welcome to Grandma's Attic. It's nice to have you back.
It's great to be here, as always.
Yeah, it seems as though even though you've evolved as a musician, every time I see you, you just have more depth and more to offer us. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that. I thank you for growing in the music and bringing new things to us every time you come. What makes you search out new music to do?
Well, I think I keep listening to whomever I'm coming across, and if a song strikes me as something that I might want to do, I'm certainly listening. I've got my ear out for that. But you know, there are a bunch of people that I am familiar with through all the years that I've been doing this, that I kind of keep track of. But I'm also interested in hearing, like you keep digging up all kinds of interesting new people. So it's great to hear.
It's my job.
It's great to hear this, you know, young people coming forward doing what they're doing.
There's great musicians coming forth. One of the things that a lot of people don't know about you, but some people know, is that you played with Pete Seeger and you were really involved in one of his pet projects. You want to talk a little bit about that and a
Sure.
little bit of the history of that?
Well, Pete was actually the one who came up with the idea with a friend of his who had handed him a book about sloops that had been sailing in the 19th century on the Hudson River. And he thought, he was already involved with trying to figure out how to clean up the Hudson. In
Right.
those days, it was filled with all kinds of pollutants just being piped into the river
Textiles.
from every...
Textiles
that
and other
raw
things.
sewage from cities and
Ew.
everything else. So he decided to have a vessel built. He had one of these schooners, 106 feet long, 106 feet tall, and it became the flagship of his Clearwater Inc. effort. So he created a whole organization, was built up around that, and a lot was done. In fact, tremendous amount of cleaning up of the river, particularly through people in canoes and small boats going up and down the riverbanks, finding a pipe, tracing it back to the source, taking them to court.
Yep.
And they really, it's been an incredible impact.
Now the Clearwater project still goes on today.
It still does. She was just rebuilt in this last year, and she's back on the river sailing. And one of the nice local connections is that the Mystic Whaler that home ports here in New London
Right.
goes down every spring, and it takes students out on the river. So one of the big efforts of what Pete wanted to do was to get young people in schools along the Hudson who never got a chance to get out on the Hudson to do that. And so both of these vessels can take 50 kids at a time out on the river for 3 or 4 hour sail, and they drag a net and they bring up the creatures that are in the river and they talk about them. So a tremendous amount of teaching can go on in a very short period of time.
Right.
And particularly when you get into Yonkers and some places where these kids are growing up in neighborhoods where they might not even get to see the water very often.
Much less know that milk comes from a cow.
That too.
Right.
So that's a lot of that was the basis of Pete's wish to get that.
Now, do you think that as Pete did that, he realized how big of an impact it would have and how big of an impact his music in particular would have on this generation?
I'm not sure that I don't think he ever bothered thinking about that. You know, he was so humble that his main interest was to excite people. On stage, he was the quintessential person to get other people to sing. He could do it at the drop of a hat.
He could.
And then he would write out long, big sheets, so that people could read the lyrics and whatever. So he was wonderful at that. But that was all a part of his wish to get people energized and active. And so I'm not sure he ever bothered spending much time thinking about what his impact was.
Mm-hmm.
But even more recently, I've been thinking about how music functions in this role.
Mm-hmm.
And we just heard this incredible story about Nigeria and all the leaders of Nigeria coming together, being brought together
Yep.
to sing a hymn together. I mean, what an incredible idea.
What a way to
And-
form some camaraderie.
Right. To get people to actually talk together through music is incredible. So,
Well,
and when we did, a couple of weeks ago, we did the concert of Hope and Resistance.
Yep.
And I heard from many, many people after the fact how moved they were, how inspired they were by the music that they heard.
Now
that
we have two shows coming up at Friday Night Folk. We'll talk about the one that's coming up first after. But in February, we have our Pete Seeger tribute, which
Absolutely.
is one of the reasons I really wanted to talk so much about him. We've done this. This is our third year
Yep.
of doing a Pete Seeger tribute. We did one the first year, the year that he passed away, and then we did one last year. And each time we've done it for a cause. This year we're doing it for kind of a close cause. Do you want to talk
Sure.
a little bit about that?
Start Fresh. that are
Start fresh.
bringing
Yep.
refugees into our community.
Yep.
And actually,
right into New London.
and the third family that they're housing is coming in momentarily.
Yep.
And they have a fourth family planned if they can get the money, and that's why we're raising this
Yep.
money.
They have to raise, I think it's $4,000 per
is-
family
Yeah.
in order to bring a family in. So that's kind of our goal.
Yep.
Is to raise $4,000 through this benefit concert coming up February
24.
24th. I
Yep.
have dates in my head. I have so many dates in my head. I
Yeah.
never get them all right. But if you all want to know more about that, you can go to FridayNightFolk.org and you can follow all the stuff on that. Now, do you have a Facebook page? You have a Facebook
Yeah.
page.
Sure.
So you can follow Geoff on Facebook too and find out all this wonderful stuff from him. Now, this concert that's coming up, this is why we're here really, is so we can talk about what we're doing on the 20th, right?
On the 20th.
On the 20th of this month, January, Friday Night Folk.
Right. Every year now, for many years, I've shared a midwinter concert. And part of the reason is that we know I'm local, so
Yep.
even if it snows, I might be there. But
You will be.
but I've managed to pick different groups, different performers that I love, and bring them in so that I do a half a night and they do a half a night.
Right.
And this time around, it's Steve Gillette and Cindy Manxon.
Which you've done two of their songs tonight?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, this takes me back a ways, but when I was in college at Middlebury,
20
Steve's-
years ago.
Yeah, right. Steve Gillette came and sang in the Gamut Room in
Oh my
Hepburn
gosh.
Hall. We had this little coffee house room, and he sang there, and I never forgot it. You know, I followed his music ever since then. He is one of the best guitar players I've ever heard, and he actually has guitars built with interior strutting in such a way that they have resonance that's really unusual, and he uses that in remarkable ways. But he also is a wonderful songwriter. That The Old Trail
Right.
is one of his. And Cindy, meanwhile, has made her career singing originally mostly traditional stuff, playing originally lap dulcimer. She's picked up the concertina over time, and just beautiful voice. And the two of them have been now married for some number of years. But she's also sung with Ann Hills and people like that. She's been an important part of the folk scene, at least my folk scene, for a long time. So it's a delight for me to have them to share the night with.
Now, you're not a songwriter, but you definitely have which is something that not a lot of musicians nowadays can say. You've made a living doing music. How does that feel to you?
Well, I feel extremely gratified. Now, I mean, I should explain, it's not that I'm out touring all the time. Part of my living is with Mystic Seaport, where
Right.
I run music programs. So there's a piece of...
But it's still
Right.
making a living
well,
doing
they
music.
they brought me there as a singer, and I make sure that that part of the museum's interpretation is done right.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I feel blessed. There's no doubt about it that I've been able to do something that I love. And I could have been an English professor. That's what my parents wanted me to be. But I took a little left turn out of graduate studies and ended up singing with guys in New York and singing sea music down at South Street Seaport. And the quartet that I was a part of was brought to Mystic Seaport back in 1980. And that was the beginning of my relationship with the Seaport. So yeah, it's been a wonderful thing.
Now, you consider yourself a folk singer.
Yeah.
That's what you consider.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think of what is going on with, quote, folk music today? And how do you compare folk music to what is being called Americana music?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I think
It's my job.
the Americana label covers so much ground, it's hard to pin down. There's a lot of great music that's brought in under that umbrella. But I think the big part of the folk scene these days is singer-songwriters and what they produce. And I think that what's being done now to some extent is rather different than what I remember from the folk scare of the 60s when it was...
Well, that was really more or less protest music,
yeah,
don't
a
you
lot
think?
of that. So, for instance, I mean, on the 20th, I'm going to sing a Phil Oakes song. And Phil Oakes was one of the voices of that period of time and the Vietnam War and all of that. So there was a tremendous amount of that. But there was Peter, Paul, and Mary, and let's see, Ian and Sylvia, these various
Right.
groups that were singing a lot of other stuff,
Yeah,
both traditional and songs that they were writing.
right.
So what I can say is that I think the folk scene is vital and very alive these days.
Absolutely, absolutely. And people that don't recognize that aren't looking at music as a whole.
Right. Yeah.
They're listening to Pop 40 and losing out on
Yeah.
a huge amount
They
of what's
really
going on
need
in
to
music
pay
today.
attention to finding the live music that's out there. And
Absolutely.
obviously, I mean, you are able to create a venue for some of these young singers that are singer-songwriters that are coming out. Tomorrow night I'm doing a house concert in Philadelphia.
Nice.
And I'm en route to Oberlin, Ohio to do other things, but I'm doing a concert out there too. So wherever I go, I call up people and I say, hey, you want to have, how about a house concert? So in fact, for the current folk scene, and a lot of the activity is a little bit off the radar. You really, if you're listening to college radio stations and such, you're hearing this music being played, but it's you kind of got to dig around sometimes to find the live
You do.
performance
It doesn't
venues.
pop up on Pandora unless you look for it.
Right.
It doesn't pop up on iHeartRadio even unless you're looking for it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely alive and vital. Now, do you think that the folk music today is as protesty as it was in the 60s and 70s? Or do you think it's more just homegrown acoustic type music?
I think that the latter is the case in a lot of ways, but I think that there's more that over the last few years, there's been a new growth of protest music.
I think we're going to see a bunch of that coming up in the next year or so.
I'm hearing rumbles.
Yeah, I think so too.
And certainly amongst the people that I hang out with,
Right.
and some of my favorites, people like Magpie, the
Right.
duo that I shared the concert with
At
last
Water
year.
Donnelly, I'd
Yeah.
love to see what they're going to do
Yeah.
with this mess.
Yeah.
Yes, I said mess on public television. I can say that it's my show. It's fun. So when you're picking music and putting music together for a show, do you look at your venue? Do you look at who's coming to the show? Like you're going out to the Midwest. Are you going to do sea shanties out in the Midwest?
I'm going to do an interesting mix there, but probably not a lot of protest stuff. Although actually, this is in Oberlin, Ohio, and it's at Oberlin College. So that audience is pretty open. So I'm probably going to do a Pete Seeger song or two, but I mix it up because my hosts out there are very much into traditional music and traditional ballads. So I'm sticking a couple of those in there, and I like to, I didn't bring the other instruments that I could play, but concertina and bones in particular are pretty exciting.
Yeah, they are.
So
are you going to be playing those instruments on the 20th?
Probably not, because I'm focused. I mean, the 20th is kind of an interesting day, being Inauguration Day.
Oh, that's right.
And so my set is going to be a little bit targeted toward that. I don't think Cindy and Steve are likely to be making as many comments as I might make in my music that night. But I will have a perspective. However, when I go, then tomorrow night in Philadelphia, here's a woman who's opening her house for the first time to do a house concert, and she's got a lot of her friends coming. So I'm going to probably lean much more toward my maritime repertoire and some of the fun stuff that comes out of that, and sing-along stuff. So I'll bring in that Pete element.
That's one of the things that you do really well, is just like Pete did, is get people to start singing along. You have some fans that the reason they come to your concerts is because they can sing along with you. And they call my radio show on a very regular basis to say, what's up, and blah, 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 what's going on with Geoff, what's going on with Geoff. So that's a good thing. Do you ever see yourself taking the time to do any writing?
Well, I would, yes. I mean, I tell myself I should be doing that all the time.
Do you?
But songs don't come easily to me. Now, writing other stuff, I've actually written other, stuff, much more way back. But I think I should, sit myself down and try to put some of my feelings and thoughts out in a musical form.
I think people would like that. I know I would relish an album that was put out by you that you wrote. I love the songs that you bring to us, and I love listening to your take on different musicians and different musician songs, but I think that an album that you wrote would certainly teach us a lot. I think that you have the ability to teach a lot of people a lot of things about the history of maritime and the history of America in general. Now, you do something during the summer that we haven't talked about that has to do with music and the water. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, which thing are you thinking of?
The going out on the boat with the people and taking people out on the boat and doing that.
Well, I do have the pleasure of going sailing on vessels, particularly in Maine. But a week-long cruise with 24 people who come out for me to sing to them every night and every day, which is a lot of fun. And I do that occasionally on 3-day sails on the Mystic Whaler when we have the opportunity. But that's really, it's great because I get to cover a tremendous amount of ground. In terms of, it's a challenge, of course. It's 5 nights and 5 days. I do daytime programs. I share one of the nights with the captain and his wife, who are wonderful singers too. But
nice.
But for the most part, it's my
If people wanted to go on one of those cruises, where could they find out more about that?
Well, they probably ought to go to my webpage or contact me on Facebook.
What is your webpage?
GeoffKaufman.com.
okay? And they can find you on Facebook under Geoff Kaufman on Facebook. So those are two places you can find out what Geoff's doing and the cruises that he has set up coming up in summer. And I'm pretty sure
If
I'm pretty
anybody's
sure
going
they
to
book.
Florida, by the way, from the month of like the 22nd of January to the 21st of February, I'll be singing on a schooner in Key West.
Nice.
Yeah.
And people can get on that schooner.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty
In
of
the afternoon, there are 2-hour sails in the afternoon and the evening.
nice. That's out of Key West in
Yep.
Florida. So if you're headed down south, those are things you can do. So let's just go over coming up. It's the 20th of January.
Right.
You and
Steve Gillette and Cindy Manxon.
okay, and you can find out more about that at FridayNightFolk.org, and we're also on Facebook. And then coming up on the 24th of February, we'll be doing a Pete Seeger tribute that
Right.
you'll be heavily involved in and
Right.
pretty much running and
And
getting
people
together.
like the Carolins and Ben and Nancy Parents
Mm-hmm.
are on that roster, and it's going to
Okay,
be
great.
wonderful. And Nick Avento. So we got a
Nice.
wonderful lineup of
Nice.
people that are going to do a couple of songs apiece. And then actually the multilingual or the bilingual chorus from the regional magnet school
Nice.
are going to be a part of this.
Nice.
Which is
That's
really
gonna-
cool.
That's going to be great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you if you have one more song that you can take us
Yeah.
out with.
Okay.
I would like that very much.
Sure.
Geoff, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
to Grandma's Attic Music Review. I love having you here, and I can't wait to see you on the 20th.
Right.
All right, so while he's going back, remember that's FridayNightFolk.org, and you can find it on Facebook. Also remember, shop local, shop in your neighborhood, and it's cold out. It's cold out. Check on your neighbors, especially if your neighbors have small children or are elderly. We need to take care of our neighborhoods, and we need to take care of the people that are next to us. You may not be their best friend, but you can be their neighbor. So until next week, everybody, have a great, great week. Bye-bye and God bless.
Well, I'll do a song that's was written by Robert Killian, who used to be one of the Sloop Singers. And just to go out on a positive note, he wrote this wonderful song called There'll Come a Day.
There'll come a day when the river